Bill and Ted's. I couldn't see Keanu in any other role. So, wow, you are still here. Thank you for staying. I know this is like the last round of sessions, so appreciate the attention. Thank you so much for having me, LeadDev. It's a pleasure to talk about how we do some of our engineering at IBM. I've had such a great day. I've picked up something from almost all of the sessions that I hope a little bit touches on in my talk. And I wanted to start with one from earlier this morning. Do you remember what Rebecca from Swarm? She said improving engineering velocity. It's like still the #1 metric that we ask for, and you're going to see it here too. It is. It's still the #1 metric that we ask for, that our leadership teams ask for. So let me just start with like explaining the title. So are we at zero waste in our engineering practices? No. Like I'm seeing that Jemiah was saying, like the song that doesn't end. We're going to continue to have a drive towards zero waste in our engineering practices. So we have a long way to go, but I think we've done a lot over the last few years to rid ourselves of waste. I personally can't stand waste in our system. Myself, when I was a developer, any code that I wrote that never saw the light of day, it was frustrating to me. Like, why is no one using this? Why, like, what was the problem, right? And I always looked at waste as like the biggest indicator of whether the team is productive or not, because at the end of the day, that's all we have is our time. So waste to me throughout our engineering practices is a huge focus that I have, and the team has a lot. But I picked on zero waste for a reason. So IBM's big company, we have a unit called sustainability software. And in sustainability software, we make products for tracking sustainability initiatives like ESG, tracking assets and seeing what kind of waste happens in your assets. Think like nuclear reactors running on our software that tell you maintenance programs, predict when it's going to need to be maintained. We have trains, planes, automobiles running on the software. And so a lot of the companies that I work with, you know, they're like, well, we're trying to get to zero waste in our manufacturing. We're trying to get to zero waste in our production, in our own facilities. And I took that and I looked at the definition, right? It's the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery. That's the impact without threatening the environment or human health. Now, if you look at that, that's like the same definition of what our engineering teams are doing, right? The conservation of their resources, responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery. How much of that can we build into our team? So the more we conserve our team's limited resources, the healthier their environment. So I'm going to share with you a story about how we look at that on one of the teams I work with. I have several. I'm going to analyze one and give you a little bit of information about them. Maybe some of it will resonate with you. Maybe some of it are challenges that you face too. And maybe there are some examples of things that we've done that you want to try, or certainly that we can talk about. So first of all, IBM, oh my goodness, what a history this company has had. Over 100 years, many, many inventions. I wouldn't even just say inventions, have been promoting the use of new technologies like way, way long ago. I have 1880s. And so, you know, I look at the history of IBM, it's really, there's been a lot of change, right? There was a period of time IBM was known as more of a consulting organization, services organization. You know, now we're putting huge investments into quantum. But really at the core of it, IBM's been an engineering company, a research and engineering company. Sometimes we have research projects that go out there and change the world. Sometimes we have research projects that just push the field a little bit further ahead. And so this is our history, but what do you know of IBM today? Like how many of you know of IBM today? Right? And raise your hands if anybody works with IBM software products. Like a couple, right? Like a lot of times I'm talking to like future prospective IBMers who are in school and they're like, what does IBM do? So I wanted to share with you just a couple software products. So IBM Now is a software and consulting company. We have a very distinct line. There's a software organization, and then there's our consulting organization. And the consulting organization ranges from like technology consulting to business consulting. I've been in software my whole time at IBM. I started in research. I did software-related research. My research was brought into a product, and I've been in product ever since. Played many hats in product, but I've been there ever since. So some of these brands may be familiar to you. Red Hat, SPSS, some of you may use. QRadar and security, Z systems. We still have a ton of mainframe products out there and clients out there. Watson for our AI. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this product with a hard hat. So Maximo. Maximo was my first engineering management role. So after having been a developer, having been a researcher, done some user research, and then spent some time as a product manager, I came to an engineering leadership position, and I really believed in the product. So I mentioned to you that we had a set of technologies that track assets and asset usage. So a technician needs to go and fix an HVAC system here in the building. They're going to use our system to identify what's the problem, what have they done to resolve it, and we use that data to predict when that asset may fail. Let's say that HVAC system has a faulty pump. We'll predict, hey, that pump is likely to fail within the next 6 months, help you analyze when should you be replacing it and get you on a strategy for replacing it. So I loved the product. Problem was that the team had really been formed, and I think just a little bit earlier, was it Matthew? Let me double check here. It was Adam. Adam talking about organizational structures and how the organizational structure reflects kind of the system architecture, the system diagram of the team. This was a product that, majority of our customers, thousands of customers, used on premises. They took deployments from us, they took our code, they would run it themselves. And so the model of operating was very much a long cycle. We had months sometimes before we would have new components available for them to use or updates. And in some cases, there was good reason for that. Like the nuclear reactor, they are a regulated industry. They are not allowed to make updates without going through a really long, lengthy process. And so they're not going to take code updates more than like once every couple years. But most of our customers weren't in that position. And so when I joined, and I think a few others here brought this up today too, the management team that was kind of preparing me for this was Aaron talking about like release captains and having somebody who can really spearhead and quarterback the team. They were preparing me for the role. They said like this team underdelivers, they never get it done on time, they are lack of motivation. We think it's because they're just not skilled. And so this was what I was walking into, and it was like 300 developers worldwide. And so the leader of the organization said to me, Suzanne, it's like we're trying to build a Tesla on a Model T production line. The processes are antiquated. The people's skills are antiquated. Like, go fix that problem. That's going to be your first problem to solve. Oh, well, that's an easy problem to solve, right? So the first thing I ended up doing and this was September of 2020, the same leader also said to me, by the way, your first major release is in January of 2021. And I was like, okay, great. Well, there must be a plan already underway, and we have this like huge product release coming out in January. So let me sit down with, the quarterback for the project. Let me find out where it's at. Sat down with them. Like, we don't have a plan to deliver this by January. So, okay, well, who does have the plan? Go talk to the chief architect. So, okay, I go talk to the chief architect. Like, what's the plan to deliver by January? There is no plan to deliver by January. Go talk to the development manager. Okay, so I go talk to the development manager, and they send me back to the quarterback. It's like, who had a plan? Like, how are we going to get this product done by January? Turns out the team had been used to like being thrown these like really intense deliverables and timelines, unattainable goals. And it felt a lot like the picture earlier of the sloth. Like, you walk into the room and there's the sloth like, hammering out, like, why is it so difficult? Why is there like so much challenge? So a whole bunch of people were needed in order to get this on track. So the first thing that we did is we just sat down with the team. I sat down with every squad. There were 25 different squads ranging from 6 people to 15 people per squad, all responsible for all different aspects of the product. And the goal was just to find out, like, what is it that we're building right now? What do we know about what we're building? And from that, I took away that, there were long cycle times. So, there was a lot that was being shoved into the long cycle time. Like almost the teams had been sort of on this train of thought that if I don't get my feature or my capability or my improvement shoved into this release, I'm going to miss the boat. And I don't know when the next cycle is going to come. It could be a year from now. That mode of thinking was like hurting the team really badly. So, what was happening was by the end game, like when we were just getting close to releasing a product, they would work nights and weekends continuously. That was the way things got done. So the teams were burned out. Like I could see it. I could see it in people. It wasn't that they had lack of motivation, that they had lack of skill. They were burning out. And that was how the system, right? We mentioned earlier systems thinking. The system was designed for them to burn out on a continuous basis. So how did we get some clarity on what the team is building? So first and foremost, like just getting alignment among the products teams. What are we building? What are the top things? And that's it. This isn't about trying to figure out, well, what's the best thing that we should be building? It's also about figuring out what are the things that the team can say no to and have an opportunity to say no to without repercussion. So here's the list. Nothing else but this list is what we're doing right now. Not because all those other things are not important, but right now, this is what we need to do and what we can be successful at doing. So getting product alignment, not easy, really hard. The teams, I mentioned there were 25 different squads. They each had every squad had a different product owner who was telling them what to do. And so they believed that should be the model in which they work. And so aligning all 25 streams of work did not equate to like a high quality end deliverable. It equated to little bits. Who mentioned earlier, like you could have one project done really well, or you could have two projects done not so well. It was like that, spread very thin. The second thing was transparency. The teams didn't know what each other were working on immediately. So like everyone had a backlog. They were very private, right? I don't know if that exists, that culture exists in your organizations. Like, I don't want you to see what we're working on in this sprint. That mindset had to end. Like we needed to be able to see what each other was working on so that way we could align the plans and make sure that like in the systems diagram, in the system of relationships, that we were going to end up with something that was better than the sum of its parts. That's why we needed the transparency of our backlogs. So we opened them up. Everybody had to open them up. We published them. We made them visible. The whole company could actually see them if they wanted to. No one would have understood them, but that was fine. At least they were visible. And so anyone who was going to be in that like quarterback role could go in and see where each of the squads were, what they were working on. Then I think one of the areas where we still do a lot of work on this is like clarity around the requirements. And so a lot of waste was happening in poorly written stories. We all have been there. You see a story, it doesn't describe anything of what is like needed in order for engineering to take that and go run with it. And so we needed to really build in clarity. And to do that, we tried many things. We put in place structures, we put in place diagrams. We said, here's the list of everything that needs to be written up in that story. But really at the end of the day, having joint ownership over the stories was what helped move them ahead. So a lead dev, a lead PM, a lead designer working on at least the major, more complex stories together. And that helped us get to that rather than thinking that we know what we're going to be coming out with, actually knowing what the reality is of what we could deliver and by when. And then discipline in our practices. Like the discipline had fallen off because there was no visibility and there was no accountability. So like stories weren't reviewed by those who needed to be reviewed. They needed to be reviewed by automation. Well, we can get to that later. We need to get this done. Remember, we're working nights and weekends. Automation is not important for us to get in the night and weekend. Let's get the component complete. Testing, like full-on testing, like end-to-end, not happening. Acceptance criteria, not having that listed out. So there was a whole lot that, it wasn't any one person's fault. It's just things that had fallen to the wayside simply because the teams weren't able to step back and change the process of how they were working, especially across such a widely distributed teams. So I talked about alignment with the product teams. I really do believe, like I've been a product manager. I've been in a user research role. I'm now an engineering manager. I do believe that when we are aligned and we work together as one, that that gets us the best quality product. When we're passing, hey, I'm going to pass requirement over to design, design's going to do a design for it and then pass that over to engineering, it just fraught with opportunity to be creative and also not get it right. So getting the alignment was important. This is like our high level view of how we deliver a product. I think someone today showed something similar, right? We start with discovery. What are we building? Then delivery, and then we launch and scale, then we cycle back. And we do this on a continuous basis. So to get to that alignment, I'm going to show you a real artifact that I had to scratch most of the words off of because, one, they're meaningless to you, but two, they also are confidential. So ultimately what we do is, at the end of the day, we break out the top priorities. So this is our list of priorities. And then how much of the team do we have allocated to working on the priorities? And so that way, it's very clear. There's no games being played. There's no dishonesty in the system. This is how the team is allocated. And this is our vehicle for communicating up, down, and across. So the rest of the team knows how the team is allocated. This simple, very simple tool, very, very simple communication has helped us get through a lot of difficult conversations really easily. Just showing where the team is allocated and what are the top priorities that they're working on. And notice that, like, to keep the lights on, 40% of the team, it's a huge amount of the team. It turns out the benchmark is somewhere around like 35%, which I was actually surprised to see. I think that was a study that came out last year. So our goal through automation, reduce that 40% down. So, and we'll show you a little bit about how we're doing that. Okay, so clarity on the requirements. One, joint ownership was probably the most impactful thing that we did in order to get clarity on the requirements. You can put as many templates and what to fill out as you'd like, but when it came to having a group of people who were working together to drive clarity into the requirements, the development lead, what do we need to know in order to build this? That helped us out so much. And then what we also did is we said, okay, like, we're skipping a lot of our process. We need to make sure that that's happening. Product leader, design leader, like, be with us on this. We need to make sure that we're getting our definition of done complete. Like, don't let us skip it. And it was like almost a point of pride for some to be able to say, oh, we didn't follow that process, so we were able to get our feature into the product. Feature into the product that's causing quality issues, that is causing integrations not to work. Like, this is not how we should be judging ourselves. So we got their buy-in to help us fight the good fight, like, make sure it's complete. So that way, when we're out there, we have the best quality product going forward. And this is actually just a snapshot of one of the team's views that they were jointly building together. Next, what else did we do in order to build that clarity and that stakeholder alignment? We included everybody in our retrospectives, and then that was a point where we could continuously improve. So in this particular example, this is actually from one of the retrospectives. What did we learn? Like, our estimations and our story points were pretty good. They'd been improved. That was a point of pride for the team. The backlog, when it came to backlog refinement, we needed the whole team to understand the coming work together. So it wasn't something that just engineering did, but we did in partnership with our product and our design leaders. And it also showed us what did we need to improve. Now, this is for one specific product. Every retrospective had a different outcome for each of the products. But this gave us a sense of, like, together, we know what we need to do to get better. And then we used an example from another one of the teams that I worked with. This is someone who, in one point in time, started implementing practices like this. And when they did, so think of each of I'm sure some of you have seen this before, but each of the green dots is an issue. And the axis here is how much time it takes for them to complete the issue. You could see that the amount of time it took was actually dropping significantly after these practices went into place. And then the blue highlight around it is like the range of predictability. And you can see the range of predictability got a lot tighter too. So we showed this to the team, like, practices like this actually do have a positive impact. This is why we do it. So this helped us serve as a motivating function for the team. So the next chapter was around automation. So we got aligned on, all right, what are we building? What are the requirements? Get them to be more explicit. Also tighten the list of what we were building. Now we needed to automate. And we were able to drop that keep the lights on activities by about 10% simply by automating away some of the activities within there. We also saved some of the squads up to 50% of their time that were spent on toil, on manual testing, manual integrations, manual deployment processes, and then 80% of fewer security vulnerabilities that were found in our software, simply because we tied into a secured pipeline. Like, these are actions that took time for us to build. In fact, I'll show you, we had to build this from the ground up. From our build, our unit tests, our team, each of the teams, the 25 different squads had a pipeline that they needed to build. We had to have an integration pipeline that was built out. Then we had to have like a release candidate pipeline that was built out, and the release pipeline. Now, we also deploy frequently into our SaaS products, but we still had to create good packaged software for those companies that choose to run on their own, and shortening this down, the cycle down for us, so that way we could continuously deploy into our SaaS environments, but also make available for our customers to download. That was really where the issue was coming from. So why did we do that? Well, that gave us some payoff as well. So this is like that same view. You can see that our issues dropped from, in some cases they were up to 25 days down to 5. Which was great on average. And then also the range of predictability got a lot tighter. But I think the area that, we kind of saw the biggest benefit from was bugs and application bugs. So bugs in our system and application specific bugs. So we have everything from like the asset management tracking I mentioned earlier to like a computer vision component that will detect defects in images that are coming into the system continuously, like let's say off of a manufacturing line. We have another part of the system that does intelligence around when predicting failure, and AI for prediction. So it's like a ton of different applications, and it was in the application quality that we wanted to reduce the number of bugs that we were finding. And simply by putting in the right steps of automation, we were able to reduce that down. Now, that's not enough. Like, we still have much more to go, but it's a start, and that gave the team a sense of, yes, investing in this. And I don't mean the engineering team. I also mean the stakeholder team, the product management team, even the design team. Like, this is a good investment of the team's time. Okay, so the other piece of this was continuous engineering. So we're continuously being pressed by release dates. There's no time for us to do the automation tests mentioned earlier. That lowers our quality, gives us distractions. Right? And then so the investment and the focus on continuous engineering was a mindset shift. So features, it's not just code. We need to understand the big picture, also know what questions to ask. Development practice shift, and then finally the smaller changes, right, that are reviewed with higher quality. Okay, and then the next chapter we had was around visibility. So this one's the toughest one because a lot of the teams don't want visibility into the work that they do. But at the same time, it's like our best way to argue for where we need resources, where we need to move teams around, where we need additional infrastructure resources, for example. And so within Jira and Git, the teams use both. We ended up having tags for all of the different kinds of work that they were doing. And that gave us a view of like, are we really building like enough new capability to help increase like the value to our customers? And so you can see, we now had a proof point that said, yes, we were spending 55% of the time. Benchmark is 35. That was good. But we want to even do more. We want to reduce the keep the lights on and get more functions out there. And so what I ended up doing with the team is reviewing these like squad by squad, not as a point of comparison, but more so that way I could see where we were improving and where we were declining. Remember the metric, right? Velocity is still like the king of metrics. We still needed to know that so that way we could get to a point where we knew if the teams were improving or not. So I'll show you another example of what we looked at. I never look at this to compare like one team versus another. Oh, why does someone only have 4 points planned and someone else has 1,300? It's so not important. That team has incredibly complex work that they do. that team is working on like a feature, so a small feature. So in essence, it was more about seeing that they were completing work and what was getting in the way so I could remove blockers. And in the last few seconds, what I will share is the one other area that we looked at was our cost of operations and where could we get reduced zero waste there. We found out that we were about 80% of the time we were over allocated on our infrastructure. So we ended up doing a lot of work in order to reduce that amount of time, that amount of resources that were allocated so we could save on costs and reduce waste there too. So in sum, alignment, automation, and visibility were the keys for this product team, and every product is different, comes in with a set of different circumstances. So I leave you with one thing to do: continuously hunt so that you can reduce waste as well. Thank you so much for your time.